Hello everybody, I'm Christopher from GizChina Germany, today with the review of the Kingzone Z1, which is the current flagship device made by Kingzone. What you see in front of the camera here are the wall accessories that come with the phone. This is the packaging it gets delivered in, the typical Kingzone box, but without a picture of the phone on top this time, and they also didn't print the specs of the phone on the rear, but rather went for a sticker, which is probably cheaper and they are saving money here. The accessories you get with the phone are pretty typical for Kingzone. You get 1 ampere power supply, 1 OTG adapter, 1 micro USB cable, 1 pair of headphones, 1 user manual, 1 warranty card, a screen protector and a bumper that protects the rear of the phone. Let's get right to the design of the Kingzone Z1. The Kingzone Z1 is available in white gold color and in blue gold color, but actually I have the blue version in front of me and it really isn't blue, it's rather a mix of gray and black and golden metal. And Kingzone also claims this phone to feature very slim bezels, which actually is not the case. They try to trick you because it does look like this phone has no bezels if it's turned off, but as soon as you turn it on, you notice that we have a black frame around the screen, which measures in at 4mm, so we actually have huge bezels here, and that's actually kind of a fake bezel going on here. Also, Kingzone claims the phone to feature lots of metal, but that's actually not the case. Just a little metal is used here, which is a pity because the Kingzone K1 back last year was almost entirely made from metal. And now we only have a metal frame on the left and the right side of the handset, and those upper and lower design elements are actually made from plastic, which is a real pity in our opinion. And also look at those hardware keys and the label of them. You almost can't see that. That's printed on here upside down, which probably went through quality check without being noticed. So that's again a little downside of the Kingzone Z1. Also, they try to trick you by placing some stereo speakers down there, which actually aren't stereo speakers, they are just useless holes, and the rear speaker is on the rear, and there actually also is no connection between the rear speaker and those holes, so if you cover the rear speaker it will sound really muffled, which really is a pity in my opinion. The rear of the phone features a black plastic cover, which has a little structure to it, feels pretty nice, looks pretty nice, but it is very thin and this is bending easily when removing the cover, and that's a real issue because the NFC antenna is glued inside of there, and when you bend it, this antenna doesn't like that at all, and well, actually it seems like it got broken right from the very first removal of the back cover, because from day one NFC didn't work with this phone at all. And if you look at the insides of the phone, you also see that the build quality doesn't seem to be on par with other MT6752 flagships. We don't have LDS antennas for most Wi-Fi technologies. We only have an LDS antenna for 2G and 3G connection. The LTE antenna is a plastic foil antenna, as well as the GPS, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth antenna. And also the GPS antenna is pretty small, as you can see here. It's the same GPS antenna as it has been used on the Kingzone N3 Plus, which is a pity because this GPS antenna was way too small and resulted in a very bad GPS connection performance. As we have a normal sized SIM card slot, a micro SIM card slot, a micro SD slot and the removable battery, and here you see the media speaker, which is terrible small. Next, let's have a closer look at the screen, and here I was really surprised because the Kingzone Z1 comes with a 720p 5.5 inch panel, and this low resolution is very unusual for a flagship device, and you would expect that the picture quality isn't quite as good as with a 1080p panel, because at 5.5 inches 720p really isn't that much anymore, but actually Kingzone are using a very good LCD panel here, which is made by JDI, and the quality of this one is pretty good, and they also shaped the pixels in a way that you don't notice the low pixel because you actually can't see those pixels at all during normal usage, and also the picture appears to be very sharp. I really like the screen, and I almost didn't believe that's a 720p panel in the very beginning. Only when I came closer to the screen I noticed, oh, I can see pixels, okay, that really is a 720p panel, but you really wouldn't believe that when looking at the screen from a normal distance, and that's really surprising. Also, the viewing angles of the screen are very good, nothing to complain about here. The brightness could be a little bit higher. I'm at 100% here, and it's not quite as bright as other screens, and you will get into issues when the sun is shining directly onto the screen. But else, the panel is pretty good, and I'm very satisfied with it. Also, the digitizer is working fairly well. The input lag could be a little bit less. Also, the glass could be a little more slippery, but else it's a very good screen, very sensitive, very accurate. I like it all in all. Regarding the software of the Kingzone Z1, it is running the same ROM again as used with the Kingzone N3 Plus, which means we have a Android 4.4.4 KitKat running on here, which has been left mostly vanilla or stock Android. Kingzone only applied their own custom launcher to it, but everything else is pure stock Android, except a Compass application. There is no bloatware pre-installed, and the whole Android looks like it was made by Google initially. Also, we don't have much features going on here in the settings. As you can see, we have no MediaTek hot mode or any special stuff. We only have the usual control for the fingerprint scanner, which by the way is working fine, as it was the case with previous Kingzone smartphones. And we also have off-screen gestures and a control for the notification LED, which actually is an RGB LED, which means that you even can mix colors to create your own notification colors with custom applications. And we also have OTA updates present here, over the updates to be exact, and this means that you can update the Android version effortlessly through an online connection, and Kingzone is even using those, and I've got like 4 OTA updates through the time frame of 3 weeks of testing this phone. There are stuff that I don't like so much though. First of all, Kingzone once again didn't go for unified storage, which means that we have 2 partitions of the 16 GB internal memory, 1 partition for your user data and 1 partition for the application data, and this means that there is only a limited number of apps available you can install because the application space is very limited. As you can see, I've installed the usual apps like a browser, some benchmarks, some games, email application, all that stuff you need every day. And as you can see, I have 1.5 GB used of this memory and 1.4 GB free, which means that if I install some more games, I will run out of memory and have to uninstall other applications before I can install new applications. And you also can't move entire apps to the SD card. You only can do that partially, so that won't help you much. So if the memory is full, you won't be able to install any more apps, and that's really a pity. And I hope Kingzone will change that with some update in the future, so that you can make use of unified storage, which is kind of a must-have today because most phones now come with unified storage. There also are some issues with compatibility to other applications, like for example Re-Racing 3 or some benchmark applications aren't available in the Google Play Store, so you need to use some other application store to install them on your phone. I don't know why Google Play thinks they aren't compatible with this phone, because actually they run pretty fine. Also, there is a little issue with the performance of this handset. It's not quite as smooth as I'm used to from other MT6752 phones. It seems like they need to do some optimization here, because I have constant micro lags while browsing the internet or playing games, and that's really not a nice thing to have, considering that most other phones based on this SoC run perfectly smooth. So that being said, let's switch over to multimedia performance, and unfortunately this one is also nothing the Kingzone Z1 does perform pretty well in. The Kingzone N3 Plus featured an Yamaha audio decoder, but that's not the case here. It's just the plain MediaTek audio solution, and it also seems like Kingzone screwed up the hardware a little because the headphone jack doesn't sound all that good. It's not loud enough and also not very balanced. I've definitely heard better phones here, and the internal media speaker is a bad choke for a flagship device at this price level. It sounds muffled, it sounds, well, it doesn't have any basses, and I don't like the audio quality at all, and in my opinion it's one of the worst sounding China phones I've ever experienced, and that's really a pity for a flagship device, as I said. Regarding performance of reception quality, I have been impressed for 2G and 3G reception quality, as those are working perfectly fine with this phone, no issues, pretty much on high-end level. But if you connect to LTE networks, you will notice that they are using a foil antenna on here and not an LDS antenna, because the reception performance is definitely below high-end level. It's kinda average, but you definitely notice that the signal strength isn't as high as with phones using LDS antennas, and the same applies to Wi-Fi. And something that really disappointed me was the GPS performance. It's pretty much the same as with the Kingzone N3 Plus. The first fix took ages, and even after it, the GPS performance wasn't quite that good. It took about a minute to get another fix after the first fix, and it also takes ages to receive GLONASS satellites, and as you can see, the signal strength of the single satellites isn't that high, which means that if you get into areas where the GPS reception quality is limited, you might well get into issues. And also the accuracy is pretty limited on this phone. I only got 4 meters of accuracy here with 13 satellites in use. Look at the screenshot taken in another GPS test application. There it got 3 meters of accuracy and 14 satellites, but really that's the maximum you can reach. I never reached more than 14 satellites and an accuracy of more than 3 meters. So GPS performance definitely isn't that good with the Kingzone Z1. So how does it look with camera? Now Kingzone claims the rear camera to be a Sony IMX214 sensor with 13 megapixels, and the front camera is supposed to have 8 megapixels, but unfortunately Kingzone is lying again about that, because for sure there is no Sony IMX214 sensor inside of there. It's the same camera as they used in the Kingzone N3 Plus, and you definitely notice that, because as with the Kingzone N3 Plus, the quality here is really bad. Pictures look blurred, there's a lot of noise in dark environments, the LED flash isn't all that good, and the same applies to videos. So using this phone as a camera phone really doesn't make much sense, and it's okay only for quick snapshots, but no real photography. That being said, let's move over to the battery of the Kingzone Z1, and unfortunately it doesn't perform well here either. Kingzone are actually advertising the Kingzone Z1 to feature a 3500 mAh battery, which would basically be hell of a lot and the largest battery ever used inside a MT6752 handset. But well, like with the Kingzone N3 Plus, they are lying here, and actually the real battery capacity is only 2700 mAh, which, well, is less than with most other MT6752 phones. Look at the GIU S3, which features a 3000 to 3100 mAh battery. So that's really not acceptable at all what Kingzone did here. And you also notice that in battery life, it's not like the battery life is complete unacceptable, but considering that it is supposed to feature a 3500 mAh battery, it really is not acceptable. So look at this, the screen on time of this phone is about 4 hours, and that's not all that much when you compare that to other phones. Well, even the Ulefone B Pro, which is a lot cheaper, reaches 8 hours of screen on time. So 4 hours are really a bad joke, and that translates to about a day of battery life if you stay away from a lot of gaming. So the battery really isn't all that good inside of there, and a real disappointment. And that's led me to the final conclusion. What do I think about the Kingzone Z1? Well, basically it could be a great phone. It could be a great phone either if Kingzone would deliver what they advertise, or if they would stop to tell lies and just tell the plain truth and also make this phone a little cheaper. But at the current price tag, it's just an overpriced bag of empty promises in my opinion, because you really don't get what they promise. You don't get stereo speakers, you don't get a good camera, you don't get an overly good reception quality, you don't get slim bezels, you don't get a large battery. So, well, if you are fine with those flaws, you probably want to buy it. But if you're after a phone with a perfect price performance ratio, this is definitely not the phone to go. So that being said, thank you for watching this review. I hope it was helpful for you. If there are any questions left, make sure to leave them below in the comments area. So thanks for watching this video. I say bye. You will now receive a performance demo of this handset. Over and out.